Chapter 9, Developing Your Financial Genius. I didn't know I wasn't smart until I went to school. For 17 years, from kindergarten all the way through college, school was a struggle. I was always labeled an average student. No matter which class I was in, there were always kids who were smarter, more gifted, and faster learners than me. School seemed easy for the smart kids. School was tough for me. The only A I ever received was in woodshop because I loved working with my hands. I built a boat for my class project while my classmates were making salad bowls for their moms. I also didn't know I was poor until I went to school. When I was 9 years old, my family moved across town, and I went to a school for rich kids. Interestingly, there were 2 elementary schools directly across the street from each other. On one side of the street was Union School. On the other side was Riverside School. Both were public schools, one school for the rich and the other for the working class. Originally, Union School was for the children of the sugar plantation union workers, hence the school's name. Riverside was the school for the children of sugar plantation owners and managers. I attended Riverside School because the house our family lived in happened to be on the side of the street next to the river. Even though I was only 9, I was aware that my classmates at Riverside School lived at a higher standard of living than my family. Many of my rich classmates lived in an isolated community connected by a bridge across the river. Every time I crossed that bridge to play with my friends, I knew I was crossing into a different world. On their side of the bridge, my classmates lived in stately plantation manor homes. On my side of the bridge, homes were a lot less stately. The home we lived in was a home built for plantation workers. My classmates' parents owned their homes. My parents rented. Some of my classmates even had more than one home, many having beach houses. When my family went to the beach, we went to a public beach park. My classmates played at the yacht club or the country club. I worked at the country club. Although rich, my classmates and their families were not snobs. They were friendly people involved in the community. I spent a lot of time at my friends' beach homes, on their boats, and flying in their planes. They did not flaunt their wealth. They shared it. To them, being rich seemed natural, not special. It was a lifestyle and a standard of living. Their lifestyle was not that big a deal to them. It was I who thought their lifestyle was a big deal, sometimes feeling uncomfortable, sometimes out of place, and acutely aware of the standard of living that separated us. At the age of 12, my rich friends went off to private schools, and I continued on through public high school with the kids who went to Union School. I also didn't know I was a geek until I went to school. In high school, all the girls I wanted to date wanted nothing to do with me. I was not cool. The popular girls were interested in the bad boys who were older, belonged to a gang, and owned a car. Although I was a starting player on the football team and a surfer, I was not cool, not a bad boy, and didn't own a car. I was shy, fat, and drove around in our family's beige-colored station wagon, definitely not cool, in 1974, as I was getting out of the Marine Corps at the age of 27. I knew I wanted to be rich, drive fast cars, and date beautiful women. Even though I had grown up, lost my baby fat, and gotten taller and stronger, in my mind I was still the shy fat guy without much money. I knew what I wanted. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and invest in real estate, but I had no money and no skills. The more I thought about it and compared the life I wanted with what I had, the more I realized that my school teachers were correct. I was average. I had no great skills or talent. I was not smart. If I was going to be rich, I needed to find a way to be at least above my means in every way. Don't live below your means. Financial experts advise people to live below their means and diversify. To many people this sounds like smart advice. The problem with following this advice is that you wind up average because it is average advice. It is not bad advice. It's just average financial advice. Besides, who wants to live below their means? In high school, students begin focusing on their academic strengths and taking courses with an eye towards high-paying future careers. Kids are constantly pushed to be smart, study hard, and get good grades. After graduating from college, many go on to graduate school, narrowing career choices to becoming lawyers, doctors, accountants, and MBAs. Many doctors, after years of grueling medical school, go on for additional training to become specialists such as surgeons or internists. Artistic students become artists in clay, oils, watercolors, commercial graphics, and music. Gifted student athletes prepare for professional careers in football, tennis, basketball, or golf. In fact, if you go to athletic events, many parents scream for blood, demanding their kids play and their team wins. Nobody wants to play on an average team. Most of us know that to be successful in school and to have successful careers we need to do our best to be the best. We need to focus and study. We need to specialize. Yet when it comes to money, people are advised to diversify instead of specialize and live below their means rather than live at a higher standard of living. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I did not want to get an average job and live below my means. To me, living below your means is how below average people live. I did not want to drive an average car or live in an average neighborhood. I also knew that diversifying would cause my return on investment to be below average. I knew I needed to focus if I wanted a higher standard of living, a standard of living like my classmates who lived across the bridge. When I looked at the world I was about to re-enter after 4 years of military school and 5 years in the Marines, I noticed that most people worked hard to be above average professionally but were below average financially. I decided the best way to beat the A students, the rich kids, the teachers who labeled me average, and the girls who were not interested in me was to become rich. I was not angry with them. I was just tired of being average. I realized I could become richer than most people because when it came to money, most people were following below-average financial strategies and advice. Why do experts recommend diversification? As Warren Buffett says, diversification is a protection against ignorance. It makes very little sense for those who know what they are doing. Buffett also said about money managers, full-time professionals in other fields, let's say dentists, bring a lot to the layman. But in aggregate, people get nothing for their money from professional money managers. I believe that when many recommend diversification, it is simply a protection against their ignorance. I suspect Buffett is saying that it's below-average financial advice from below-average advisors for below-average investors. Warren Buffett has a different financial strategy. He doesn't diversify. He focuses. He looks for a great business at a great price. He doesn't buy a lot of businesses and pray one of them does well. He doesn't want average returns, or to play the stock market. He likes to control the company, but not run the company. When Warren talks about investing, his key words are intrinsic value, not diversification. One reason financial advisors recommend diversification is that they cannot find great companies. They do not have control, and most don't know how to run a business. They are employees, not entrepreneurs like Warren. Smart guys fail. On August 24, 2007, after the market crash, the Wall Street Journal ran a story about how quantitative funds, quants, supposedly managed by some of the smartest guys on Wall Street, all lost money. Justin Lahart, how the quant playbook failed. In other words, students received FS. The article states, even if they don't share the same statistical models, quant funds share similar approaches to the market. They are schooled in the same statistical methods, pore over the same academic papers, and use the same historical data. As a result, they can easily come to similar conclusions about how to invest. In other words, Wall Street hires academic geniuses, students and graduates of the world's best business schools who use sophisticated computer models to invest billions of dollars, and they all come to the same answer. When their models say buy, they all buy the same stocks, causing a boom, and when the models say sell, they sell en masse, crashing the market. This is not financial intelligence, not diversified, but thinking they are diversified. I have two very smart classmates who both went on to graduate from Stanford University with PhDs. Both have high-paying jobs, one with a bank and the other with an oil company. After the stock market crashed following 9/11, both lost a lot of money even though both were diversified. Over the years, I talked to them individually. I asked about their investment strategy. Both said, "I invested in a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds." Although I did not say it, I wanted to point out to them that they were not really diversified. Instead of being diversified, they were 100% invested in paper assets, primarily the stock market. They were not in investment-grade real estate, privately held businesses, or commodities such as oil production. When the market went down, it all came down. They were not diversified, but they thought they were. They had above-average academic IQs, but below-average financial IQs. Finding your genius. I built and rebuilt several businesses from 1974 to 1984. I was determined to become an entrepreneur. Just like a baby who stands and falls a number of times before learning to walk, I stood and fell a number of times before walking as an entrepreneur. I did this because I wanted to learn to be an insider, not an outsider. From 1984 to 1994, I became an educational entrepreneur because I became interested in how people learn. Although I disliked school, I enjoyed learning. Also, I wanted to know why I always felt stupid in class. During those 10 years, Kim and I built an education company that taught entrepreneurship and investing from our offices in Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Singapore, and the US. During this period of time I did things differently, almost the opposite of the way traditional schools teach. Instead of creating an environment where only one or two students were smart, I created an environment where everyone could feel smart and learn. Instead of competing, the class cooperated. Instead of having students listen to me lecture, I created different games to teach specific subjects. Instead of being bored, adult students were actively challenged and participated. I went on to develop my educational board game Cashflow from what I learned as an entrepreneurial educator, the first game to teach both accounting and investing at the same time. As you may know, accounting can be the most boring subject on earth and investing the most frightening. By combining the two subjects into one game, learning became challenging and fun. A person could play the game 1,000 times and still learn something new about accounting, investing, and themselves. The game was officially launched in 1996. As I learned more about the human mind and how we learn, I found out a number of things about our school system that were disturbing. I found out that our current system of teaching actually damages a child's brain. In other words, even an A student can be slowed up by the educational system. The more I studied and practiced different teaching techniques in my classes, the more I began to find the answers I was looking for, and I found why I had constantly been labeled stupid or, at best, average. Multiple intelligences. Through my research I discovered the book Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences by Howard Gardner. His work was mind-expanding and validating. He teaches that there are 7 intelligences. 1. Linguistic. 2. Logical mathematical. 3. Musical. 4. Bodily kinesthetic. 5. Spatial. 6. Interpersonal. 7. Intrapersonal. His book validated what I intrinsically knew. I simply didn't have the intelligences recognized by the school system, which are predominantly linguistic and logical mathematical. This is one of the reasons I failed English twice in high school. I could not write, spell, or punctuate. I am not linguistic, and I am not logical. In my freshman year at the Merchant Marine Academy, English became my favorite subject because I had a great teacher. If not for that teacher, I might not be an author today. My English teacher at the academy had great interpersonal skills, which is why he could relate to me. I respected him. Instead of talking down to me, he inspired me. We could speak person to person rather than teacher to student. In his class, I wanted to be smart, and I wanted to learn. Instead of another F in English, I received a B. I need security later. As a Marine in Vietnam, it was my intrapersonal intelligence that kept me alive. Intrapersonal intelligence is the ability to control your emotions and get the job done, even if the job is life-threatening. Many people are not successful financially because their intrapersonal intelligence is weak. People with limited intrapersonal intelligences often say, "I need job security," or "that sounds risky." These are examples of emotions doing the thinking. Not intrapersonal intelligence. As I studied more about Gardner and his theory of multiple intelligences, I realized that the A students were those who had high linguistic and logical mathematical intelligences. Reading, writing, and math were easy for them but very difficult for me. I read and wrote slowly, and I only liked math if I was measuring something like my boat or my money. My intelligence strengths were spatial, bodily kinesthetic, and intrapersonal, which is why I doodled in class. Built a boat, and was not threatened or motivated when teachers told me I wouldn't get a good job if I didn't get good grades. At this time, you may want to ask yourself, of the 7 intelligences, which are you strongest at? You may want to list them in order, 1 being the highest and 7 being the lowest. I encourage you to read Dr. Gardner's book. 3 Parts of the Brain. Albert Einstein is credited with saying, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." As an entrepreneurial educator, I did a lot of research on the different parts of the brain. Boiling it all down to overly simplified terms, we have 3 basic parts to our brain, pictured below. 1. The left brain. Generally, this part of the brain is used for reading, writing, speaking, and logic. Kids who do well in school have well-developed left brains. From Gardner's work on multiple intelligences, the left brain would be most associated with linguistic, logical mathematical, and interpersonal intelligences. Writer, scientist, lawyer, accountant, and schoolteacher are professions for such people. 2. The right brain. This part of the brain is often associated with pictures, art, music, and other more nonlinear relationships, with creativity and imagination. From Gardner's work, musical and spatial intelligences would be most associated with the right brain. Designer, architect, and musician are professions for people with these dominant intelligences. 3. The subconscious brain. This is the most powerful of the 3 brains because it includes the old brain, often called the primitive brain. It's the primitive brain that is most like an animal's brain. It does not think, but rather reacts, fights, flees, or freezes. From Gardner's work, the intrapersonal intelligence would most relate to the subconscious mind. In my opinion, it is a person's intrapersonal intelligence that ultimately determines if they are a success or failure in life. Love, health, and money. This is because the subconscious mind is the most powerful part of the brain, especially in pressure situations. The subconscious mind also affects our bodily actions via bodily kinesthetic intelligence. For example, in the game of golf, pressure may cause a golfer to choke and miss an easy putt. Subconsciously, a person may freeze and not take action out of fear of making a mistake, or stay at a job for security rather than the love of the work. People with high intrapersonal intelligence have the ability to control the subconscious brain's desire to fight, flee, or freeze. Instead of flee, they may decide the best thing to do is freeze. If frozen, they may choose to fight. The point is, they have the intelligence to choose the appropriate subconscious response. If angry, they can speak calmly. If afraid, they can confront their fear. People think differently when their subconscious is controlled by fear. If people are fearful, they may say, "I can't do that. What if I fail?" Or "That's risky." Compare that to a person who is in a fight state subconsciously, who might say, "I'll show them. I'll get that deal just to prove I can do it." Learning to choose your subconscious state of mind before thinking and making decisions is very important. When I was in Vietnam, I felt better, flew better, and was more confident when I subconsciously chose to fight. When I was in a fleeing or fearful state, my thoughts were fearful. So choose your subconscious state of mind before using your left and right brains. Professions requiring tremendous control under stress are best for people with strong intrapersonal intelligence. For example, police officers, emergency room nurses and doctors, firefighters, and soldiers require high intrapersonal intelligence. I would say entrepreneurs require a high level of this intelligence. Which brain controls your money? The reason I became curious about the brain and how it works is because I wondered why so many people say one thing and then do another. For example, I might ask a person, "Do you want to be rich?" Most people will say from their logical left brain, "Yes. I really want to be rich." The problem is not found in their logical left brain. The problem is the subconscious brain saying, "Not you. You'll never be rich, or how can you be rich, you don't have any money." In most cases, it's the subconscious fear of failing that holds people back. It is this fear of failing that teachers use to motivate people in school. I remember my teachers saying to me, "If you don't get good grades, you won't get a good job." Later in life, when the A students who got the good jobs want to make career changes, their fear holds them prisoner. For example, I have a friend who is an attorney, an A student from Harvard, who wants to change, but he can't. He is afraid of doing something new for fear of failing and not making enough money. He says to me, "I've been an attorney for so long I don't know what else to do. Who else will pay me what I am earning?" He has a brilliant left brain, an underdeveloped right brain, and an out-of-control subconscious brain. Again, the subconscious brain is the most powerful of the three brains. The subconscious mind is so powerful that it controls our addictions. For example, most smokers want to quit. You can logically explain to their left brain all the harmful effects of smoking and show their right brain horrifying pictures of lung cancer. But if the subconscious mind wants to smoke, the person smokes. In many ways the subconscious brain controls your life, regardless if you are an A or F student. For most people, when it comes to money, there is a battle of the brains going on inside of them. It is this conflict that causes many people to live below their means when in reality they want to improve their standard of living and to be rich. As a teacher of entrepreneurship and money, I find many people, even well-educated ones, who are addicted to being poor. Something in their brain keeps them poor. Instead of turning everything they touch to gold, everything they touch turns to lead. Battle of the brains. As a teacher, this battle of the brains made me curious. I was puzzled by the conflict between a person's logical and illogical mind. I realized that true education isn't simply a matter of teaching students to read, write, and memorize answers. I realized that to be effective, true education had to align the power of all three brains. Instead of the three brains working against each other, they had to work together. If a person could align and develop all three brains, he or she had a greater chance of success in the real world. The problem with traditional education is that it focuses on only one part of the brain, the left brain. In other words, you could be a left brain genius and a subconscious moron. You can know what to do in your left brain and in your subconscious brain be terrified of actually doing it. Worst of all, many people leave school, fully able to read, write, and do math, but are terrified of failing and seek security instead of opportunity in the real world. They're taught to value knowledge over imagination, and over the ability to integrate all three parts of the brain. After years of striving to be the best, these people are told by financial experts to diversify and live below their means. To a fearful subconscious brain, this advice sounds intelligent and logical. For years these people then turned over a portion of their paycheck every month to their financial experts with the hopes that they know what they're doing. At the same time, the richest investor in the world, Warren Buffett, says, diversification is a protection against ignorance. And it is. A world ruled by left-brainers. The world is run by left-brained people. The problem with left-brained people is they think there is only one brain and only one intelligence. Many are not aware of the other parts of the brain and the possibility of other types of intelligences. When you ask a highly educated left-brained person for the definition of intelligence, he or she replies, "If you agree with me, you are intelligent. If you don't, you're an idiot." In the world of money, these left-brained people believe making money is a by-the-numbers formula, a mathematical equation. This is why when the market crashed, many funds crashed in unison. The funds are run by academic geniuses, all following the same formula. Here's another quote from the August 24, 2007, Wall Street Journal article on quant funds. Justin Lahart, How the Quant Playbook Failed. A number of quant funds, which use statistical models to find winning trading strategies, reported heavy losses this month. In many cases, the managers pointed their fingers at other quantitative hedge funds, essentially saying they all owned many of the same stocks and their models told them to sell at the same time, driving down the share prices, hurting everyone in the process. In other words, the A students used their linguistic and logical mathematical left brains to invest in the stock market and came up with the same answers, just like in school. And who pays the price for the losses? Not the A students. They have steady paychecks. They are employees, not investors, learning to win using your whole brain. Warren Buffett once said, "You have to think for yourself." It always amazes me how high IQ people mindlessly imitate. As an educational entrepreneur, I began teaching students to think outside the box and to create rather than imitate. I was surprised at how frightening this teaching process was for many of my students. Most had been so frightened into needing job security, a magic formula for investing, and avoiding mistakes that breaking the bonds of that fear was the hardest part of my job. These were smart, successful, well-educated people who wanted to make changes. They were not poor, unsuccessful, and uneducated. My job as a teacher was to show them how to use their primary intelligences and all three brains to win financially. I often called my business programs Learning to Win Using Your Whole Brain. To get people's attention, I would often say, A students work for the C students, and B students work for the government. Obviously this did not make the A students happy, but they got over it once I explained the logic behind my findings. Poor and middle-class dialects. Neuroscientists have recently discovered that the brain has mirror neurons. Many of these scientists believe this discovery is more important than the discovery of DNA. A neuromirror, in overly simple terms, is the equivalent of monkey see, monkey do, or birds of a feather flock together. That is, our brains are programmed to imitate what we see others do. It explains why quant fund managers invest in the same stocks, why poor people stay poor even though they earn a lot of money, and why a child raised in England will speak a different dialect of English with a different accent than a child born in the US or Australia. Mirror neurons of dialect and accent limit the scope of our world and who we associate with. Many kids have a tough time leaving Hawaii because their dialect of English is Pidgin English. Kids from Hawaii who speak Pidgin often go to mainland schools with big Hawaiian clubs so they can feel comfortable. Many of the kids at Union School spoke Pidgin. The kids from Riverside School were forbidden to speak it. I believe this made a tremendous difference in my life, and why I went to school in New York and not at the University of Hawaii. In the world of business and investing, poor people speak a poor person's dialect. Instead of using the language of business and investing, they say such things as government programs, welfare, and assistance. The middle class has a different dialect. They say, diversify and live below your means. Buffett, the richest investor in the world, says, "It's not that I want money. It's the fun of making money and watching it grow." Again, this is an example of a different English dialect reflecting a different mirror neuron brain. Every group speaks a different dialect. For example, when golfers get together they speak a completely different form of English. When they talk about a birdie, they are not talking about shooting wild birds on the golf course. Wherever you go in the world, if one golfer says to another golfer, "I shot a birdie," every golfer knows this person scored one below par, which means it was above average play. In the same way, simply put, rich people speak a different dialect. It's a matter of different brains and different mirror neurons. That is why crossing the bridge at age 9 was life-changing and why I do not live below my means or diversify. This is why even when I was broke, I did not drive cheap cars, wear cheap clothes, or live in a cheap neighborhood. It's a matter of mirror neurons and of standard of living. Today, neuroscientists believe that mirror neurons are the most powerful learning parts of our brains. In the classroom, it explains why some students are teachers' pets. Since most classrooms are led by left-brained people, they tend to favor the kids with the same intelligences. On the flip side, these teachers tend not to like kids who are artistic, musical, creative, physical learners, or not easily intimidated. By the time college comes around, most of the kids who are not linguistic and logical mathematical are gone. They have been labeled and eliminated. Sadly, the kids who are eliminated often leave school feeling stupid. Imagine if that happens to you at an early age. How does this label affect the rest of your life? In an experiment conducted by Harvard professor Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson in 1966, teachers were told that certain kids in their classes were geniuses even though they were not. In almost all cases, those kids received exceptionally high grades. In other words, researchers found that it was the teacher's perception of the child's intelligence that had the greatest influence on a child's learning. In the world of investing, this is called a bias. In race relations it is known as a prejudice. This is an example of the impact of mirror neurons. In simple terms, mirror neurons mean our brains are like television transmitters and receivers. Even though we are not physically talking to one another, our brains are communicating at very deep levels. For example, when we walk into a room, most of us can immediately sense who likes us and who doesn't, even though nothing is said. This is the worst part. I learned that if I did not feel good about myself, people did not feel good about me. In many instances, another person is only sending back what I am broadcasting. In other words, if I think I am a loser, other people will think of me as a loser. The good news is that you and I can change their perception of us by changing our perceptions of ourselves. This can be done by adapting our mirror neurons. It is not easy, but it can be done. For example, if I had not changed my perception of myself, I would never have met and married a beautiful woman like Kim, someone like Donald Trump wouldn't be my friend, and I wouldn't be financially secure today. If I had not consciously changed my perception, would probably still be a shy, fat, poor kid speaking pidgin English. Even though I graduated from a very good school, I left not feeling smart. I left feeling that there were people I would never be as smart as. I was always average. When I interviewed for jobs, the first questions asked were what school I went to and if I had a master's degree. If I had a master's degree, I had a better chance of being hired. Once again, even though I was in the business world, I was still in a classroom, in a world dominated by left-brain intelligence. In 1974, while working at Xerox, promising the company that I would get my MBA, I began researching the brain and different ways of learning and teaching. I was looking for a way to win on my terms, not on their terms. Being raised in a family of school teachers, I realized their measure of success was the school a person attended and how many advanced degrees he or she had. In the world of big business, it was pretty much the same thing. In most major corporations, employers want the pedigree of prestige that comes with advanced degrees from recognized schools. In other words, graduates from Ivy League schools are better than graduates of state universities, who are better than graduates of community colleges. In the world of big business, the school you attended can give you a better job, a better title, and a better paycheck. That is the measure of success. Being around my rich dad, I realized his measure of success was how much money he made, the people he spent time with, the freedom to work or not work, and how many jobs he provided. I realized I had better decide whose measure of success I wanted to base my life on. Since I did not think I could win at my poor dad's game of school and big business, I decided I had a better chance of winning at my rich dad's game. That is when my real education began. I decided to follow in my rich dad's footsteps as an entrepreneur and real estate investor. I knew I had a better chance in those areas because most A students are employees, looking for high-paying jobs and investing in paper assets such as stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Since I was a C student, I realized that I needed to use all three of my brains. Not just my left brain. If I wanted to learn to win, the questions for you are: what is your measurement of success? Where do you have the best chance of winning? Is your brain being trained to win? Are your brains working together or are they working against you? 2 disadvantages. Over the years, I discovered that there were 2 disadvantages people had when it came to money. They are: 1. Our schools do not teach much about money. Even an A student leaves school knowing very little. On top of that, via the recently discovered science of mirror neurons, most of us learn about money from people who also are not financially intelligent. This is why so many people have middle-class aspirations, i.e., living below your means, saving money, and staying out of debt. 2. Our schools do not strengthen the subconscious mind. In fact, rather than educate, schools depend on fear to motivate, threaten rather than teach, imitate rather than innovate, punish mistakes rather than encourage, play it safe rather than think bigger, and say what a person wants to hear rather than what a person needs to hear. Due to these 2 factors, many people buy when they should sell, save when they should spend when they should save, are fearful when they should be brave, and are brave when they should be fearful. Examples of such non-controlled, irrational, financially foolish, subconscious brain behaviors are: 1. All the quant funds selling at the same time, crashing the market because they were all invested in the same stocks. They were selling when they should have been buying. Panic comes from the subconscious brain. Copying or mimicking comes from the fear of being different, so they do the same thing instead of being creative and risking thinking differently. 2. When people receive a raise or come into some money, they often spend it because they feel good, instead of paying off bad debt. I know of a gentleman who inherited nearly $1 million from his parents. Immediately he bought a big house and 2 new cars on credit. Instead of getting out of bad debt, his elation got him into greater debt. Today he is out of money and trying to save his house. 3. When the economy turns down, the sales prevention department of many businesses takes control. When sales drop, most business cut back on advertising, promotion, and sales staff. Rather than save, a business needs to spend. In a bad economy, the business needs to spend more on advertising and promotions, hire more sales reps, offer more sales incentives, and be more creative. In other words, be more right-brained, and communicate more. Instead of the sales acquisition department taking the lead, the sales prevention department takes over. The sales prevention department of most companies is made up of left-brained people such as accountants, attorneys, and salaried employees, generally people with strong left brains but terrified subconscious brains. When the sales prevention department takes over, many employees lose their jobs. In my opinion, when times are tough, it is the sales prevention department that should shed a few employees. The subconscious brain thinks it's intelligent. The problem with the subconscious brain is that it can be your greatest friend or your worst enemy. It takes a person with higher intelligence to step back and objectively determine which brain is talking, the friend or the enemy. When it comes to highly emotional subjects such as money, sex, religion, and politics, it requires a highly evolved intellect to be able to detach, expand, listen objectively, and then think clearly with both left and right brains. The problem with the subconscious brain is it's reactive, not intelligent, and not able to weigh pros and cons. Arguing with an idiot. It is impossible to be logical with a person speaking from his or her subconscious brain because the subconscious brain isn't logical. It can't think. It can only react. The problem is, when people are speaking via their subconscious brain, they still think they are being logical and intelligent. For example, when I suggest that a businessperson spend instead of save during a recession, in most cases the subconscious brain takes over and begins giving the businessperson the logical reasons why he or she needs to cut back, to lay off employees, and to go into a money-saving mode. To most business people this is logical and intelligent. They do not want to learn more. Their mind is made up. The brain is closed to new ideas. If you push the issue, the mind becomes defensive. The walls go up, and instead of fleeing, they want to fight. They want to defend their decision and be right. Instead of learning, they become idiots. The problem with arguing with an idiot is that there are soon two idiots, you and the person you're arguing with. One of the reasons poor people remain poor is because they have a poor person's subconscious mind. When I talk to people who are struggling financially, many will defend their right to be poor. They say such things as, "I'd rather be happy than rich," or "You have to be a crook to be rich." If you argue with them in an attempt to open their minds to new ideas, their subconscious brain often becomes more closed, more self-righteous. Soon there are two idiots having a friendly argument. A similar event occurs with many employees and high-paid executives who like their job but want to do something else. Instead of doing what they want, their subconscious mind comes up with logical and reasonable reasons why they cannot. When informed about the high taxes they are paying as high-paid employees, they may reply, "Well, you have to pay taxes." If pressed and informed about better investments, higher returns, and less in taxes, they may reply, "That sounds risky." They close their mind to new possibilities because of fear. If you argue, there are again two idiots. To change your life. Change your environment. In my research on education and how we learn, it became very clear that environment was the most powerful teacher of all. This is why the latest validation by neuroscientists discovering mirror neurons in the brain is so important. Science is finally finding out what many of us already knew. To change your life, first change your approach. Most of us know that if we want to lose weight, we have a better chance of success by going to a gym rather than going to a restaurant. If we want to study, it might be better to study in the quiet of a library rather than trying to read while driving a car, which I have seen people doing. If we want to relax, we leave work and go to the beach or climb a mountain. And if you want to become rich, you need to find an environment that is conducive to becoming richer, an environment that strengthens all three brains. Ironically, work and school are not those environments for most people. The power of environments. If you want to grow richer and more successful, it becomes critical that you find an environment that allows all three of your brains to grow and gives them the time to develop. By 1974, I realized that I would never be hired to work for an A student. For example, a doctor or a lawyer would never hire me because doctors and lawyers need academically and professionally smart people around them. A doctor does not want a clumsy nurse, nor does a lawyer want an incompetent paralegal. Since I was a C student, I needed to find a way to get A students to work for me. That is when I decided to be like my rich dad and become an entrepreneur and real estate investor, and not like my poor dad, who was an A student and a schoolteacher. I chose to become an entrepreneur and real estate investor because I am a slow learner and I knew I needed time to develop. I was not looking to become rich quickly. I was looking for an environment that suited me, where I could spend a lot of time learning slowly. Another important reason for being an entrepreneur was that I could surround myself with smart people. I know I am not linguistic or mathematical, so I need these people as part of my team. I am still an average writer, average at math, and terrible with details. When it came to sports, I knew I was better at team sports such as football, rugby, and rowing. I am not good at individual sports such as golf or tennis. Knowing this about myself, it seemed more logical for me to surround myself with smart people who also liked being on a team. I found out the hard way that many smart people are not good on teams, which is why they excelled at school, taking tests on their own. In my world of business, I take tests every day, but not as an individual. In my world of business, I take my tests and solve my problems with a team of smart people. In other words, my genius comes out on a team. For others, such as Tiger Woods, genius comes out through the individual. The question is, are you better off as an individual or on a team? Do it your way. This does not mean I am saying that you need to be an entrepreneur or real estate investor. I'm not telling you to do what I do. What I am saying is that you may want to consider a learning environment that improves your chances of winning financially. Find your own environment and your own way to financial success. For example, if you think you can become a pro golfer, then you obviously need to spend much more time at the golf course engaging the mirror neurons in your brain to learn with the best golfers you can find. The reason the discovery of mirror neurons in the brain is significant to me is because ever since 1974 I have spent most of my time with entrepreneurs and real estate investors. I am constantly seeking opportunities to do business with great entrepreneurs and real estate investors. This is why writing a book with Donald Trump in 2006 was so important to me. More than the book, it was a great opportunity to learn via mirror neurons by spending time with a great man. Spending time with him took my perspective on business, life, and standards of living to a whole new level, almost as much as crossing the bridge to my rich friends' homes when I was 9 years old. Finding your environment today. Many business schools ask me to come and speak to their entrepreneurship classes. A common question the students ask related to financial intelligence, number 1, making more money, is, how do I find investors? Or how do I raise capital? I understand the question because it was a question that haunted me when I left the security of Xerox and became an entrepreneur. I had no money and no one wanted to invest with me. The big venture capital firms were not knocking on my door. My answer to the business school students is, you just do it. You do it because you have to do it. If you don't do it, you are out of business. Today, even though I have enough money, all I do is raise capital. That is all my friend Donald Trump does. His job is to raise capital. That is job number 1 of an entrepreneur. As entrepreneurs, we raise capital from 3 groups of people. They are your customers, investors, and employees. Your job as an entrepreneur is to get your customers to buy your products. If you can get customers to give you money by buying your products, your investors will give you lots of money. And if you have employees, your job is to get them to produce and make at least 10 times more money than you pay them. If you cannot get your employees to produce at least 10 times more than you pay them, you are out of business, and if you are out of business, you do not need to raise any more money. Obviously, this is not the answer most MBA students are looking for. Most are looking for the magic formula, the secret recipe, the quick business plan to riches. Many business school instructors squirm because most of them teach entrepreneurship, but are not entrepreneurs. Most still need a steady job, a paycheck, and are hoping for tenure. Again, it is the effect of our brain's mirror neurons not agreeing with opposing thoughts that causes them to squirm. Many business schools would rather bring in CEOs to lecture who are employees rather than entrepreneurs. The eyes tell the truth. While sharing my views on what it takes to raise capital, I watch the students' eyes. In 70 to 90% of them I see fear. Their eyes become glassy and their breathing becomes shallow. Blood has flowed from the left and right brains and into the primitive brain, the oldest part of the subconscious brain. Conversely, about 10% of the class chuckle and smile. They like my answer. Their eyes become brighter and they become excited. They know they can win. They know they can beat their classmates. They know they can become entrepreneurs. Despite an environment that thrives on fear of failure, all 3 of their brains are firing in alignment. Developing the 3 parts of the brain. For those of you who have played my cash flow game, you may recall that to win the game requires a lot of left brain financial knowledge and right brain creativity. Since it is only a game, being played with fake money, the fear of failing or losing money is greatly reduced, leaving the subconscious mind more or less neutral. Once a person understands the game, the subconscious brain shifts from fear to excitement and the joy of winning. Learning becomes fun and exciting. All 3 brains are being educated and developing. New possibilities are opening for an expanded whole brain, the cone of learning. In 2005, Arizona State University did a study on the viability of my game for teaching accounting and investing to business school students. Their findings were extremely positive and favorable, concluding that students actually learned faster and retained knowledge longer than when they learned in other ways. The university also introduced me to the cone of learning, pictured below. The second best way to learn, as you can tell from the chart above, the worst way to learn is by reading, and the second worst way is by hearing a lecture, the most popular ways to teach in traditional schools. At the top of the cone is doing the real thing. When I told the MBA students to just go out and do it, many froze. Obviously there is a gap between reading, lecture, and surviving in the real world. The Arizona State University study pointed out that just below real life is simulations or games. The study confirmed the cone of learning and that our game was the second best way to learn about the left-brained logic combined with the right-brained creativity of money management, accounting, and investing. Instead of being subconsciously fearful, learning was fun and motivating. Students felt more self-confidence, more empowered, eager to learn more, and better able to use what they had learned. The university's findings were consistent with my findings as an educational entrepreneur. I found that by focusing on Howard Gardner's fourth intelligence, bodily kinesthetic, students learned more, learned faster, had more fun, and retained the information longer. Instead of just lectures, we played different games to make different points. I encouraged playing and making mistakes, and then we debriefed once the game was over. The learning was powerful because games involve all three brains. Many times, participants became upset, angry, or sad. They did not like the mistakes they made. Some blamed the game or other participants. These emotions are all part of the learning process, in my classes and in real life. My job as the instructor was to guide the participant away from blame and emotions and into learning the lesson the game was teaching. Once participants got their personal lessons from the game, some broke out laughing, saying, "I didn't realize I do the same thing in real life." Once there is cognition, a relationship between behavior in the game and behavior in real life, the participant has the opportunity to make changes if he or she wants to. At that moment of cognition, the aha of life, all three brains are working together. Once that occurs, the participant is often open to learning more and growing. One great success story occurred recently at a boys and girls club in a very poor part of Phoenix. A team from my company set up a cash flow club. Once again, teaching financial intelligence via a game was powerful, profound, and life-changing. One particular participant was a student who was labeled learning disabled by the school system and placed in a class for slow learners. After playing the cash flow game a number of times with his friends, he slowly began to improve his reading and math skills. Today, he's in a regular class. This is the power of coordinating all three parts of the brain in a cooperative, peer-to-peer learning environment. Change your environment. Change your life. As an educational entrepreneur, it became apparent to me that environment was the strongest teacher of all. I realized that I could teach and inform, yet if the participant went back to the same environment as before, the effect of what I taught was diminished. In other words, if the person went back to the job where mistakes were punished and creativity was suppressed, what I had taught him or her was of little value. The old environment won. There is an old proverb that goes, "If I knew where I was going to die, I would not go there." Today, I know there are millions of people in environments that are not the best for their learning, wealth, and personal development. Their work and home environments are not increasing their financial intelligence and wealth. Instead of becoming richer, they become prisoners of their offices and their homes. Instead of seeking success, most people live in environments that reward playing it safe. Not making mistakes, but as Paul Tudor Jones says, one learns from mistakes, not successes. Finding your genius. For people to develop their genius, they need to find the environment that supports the development of their genius. For example, Tiger Woods' environment is the golf course. He would not have done well as a jockey. Donald Trump found his strength in the tough world of New York real estate. That environment challenged him, taught him a lot, and developed his skills. This is not an easy process. As you know, Tiger Woods works very hard at being a golf genius. Donald Trump works very hard at being a genius at real estate development. If you have ever seen the buildings he has developed in Manhattan and around the world, you know that it is easy to see his drive. Oprah survives and thrives in the very tough environment of television. One of the reasons many people do not develop their genius is simply because they are lazy. Many just go to work to collect a paycheck. It is easier for them to be average than to work hard at developing their genius. My questions to you are, what do you think your genius is and what environment is best for you to develop it? Another important question is, do you have the courage to change environments? Imagine your future if you did. For many people the answers to these questions are I don't know, or simply no. For most people being comfortable is more important than finding and developing their genius. It is far easier to be average, work hard, collect a paycheck, save money, diversify in mutual funds, and live below their means. If this is you, then keep doing what you are doing. Every one of us is different. We all have different strengths and weaknesses. This is why I do not recommend that everyone do what I did. Even though it is pretty easy to be an entrepreneur, I know that being a rich entrepreneur is not easy. The world is filled with entrepreneurs who are average. The same is true with real estate. The world is filled with real estate investors who do not make much money. My point is this: we all have a unique talent or genius. If people want to become rich, maybe even super rich, they need to find an environment that allows them to develop and apply their genius. This is not easy, but it can be done if you are dedicated and have the drive to win. In the real world, dedication and drive are more valuable than good grades. Environments that make you rich. If you want to become richer, it is important to continually upgrade your environment. This is why I shake my head every time some expert recommends living below your means. By living below your means you continually live in a lesser environment. As a young boy, every time I crossed the bridge to my rich friend's neighborhood, my brain was absorbing what it is like to live at a higher standard of living, a standard I wanted to live at. My brain was looking for ways I could achieve such a standard of living. This does not mean running out and buying a big house, flashy cars, new clothes, and getting into piles of bad debt. What I mean is to consciously and intelligently challenge yourself to improve your standard of living by increasing your financial intelligence. The best way to increase your financial intelligence is by first finding the environment where your genius can grow and develop. That can be as simple as going to a library and reading a book by a person you want to be like, or by looking at magazines with pictures of stately homes. The first step is to consciously begin to stimulate your mirror neurons to the standard of living and to the people you want to be like. In summary, financially weak people are people who tend not to develop their intelligence. They seek easy environments and easy answers. These are people who get pushed around, pay too much in taxes, work hard, and live below their means. They may be smart, good, and academic, but without the financial development of all three brains they will most likely remain weak financially. Success requires some degree of mental and physical toughness. If you can train your left brain to understand the subject, engage your right brain to come up with creative solutions, keep your subconscious brain excited rather than fearful, and then take action, while being willing to make mistakes and learn, you can create magic. You can develop your genius.